Welcome back to our channel. These half dollars looks ordinary, but one tiny error makes it worth thousands. Like and subscribe to uncover hidden coin treasures. In the quiet corners of American history, there exist treasures that rarely find their way into everyday conversations. One such treasure is the 1979 half-dollar coin. While it might look like just another piece of metal to the untrained eye, its story weaves through decades of design evolution, shifting economic landscapes, political symbolism, and numismatic obsession. The journey of this coin, from its inception to its current jaw-dropping value, is not just a tale of copper and nickel. It's a portrait of a nation's values and the hidden gems often overlooked in the pockets of the past. It all started at a time when the United States was finding its balance after the tumultuous years of the early and mid-70s. The Vietnam War had ended, Watergate had left its scar, and the country was shifting focus toward rebuilding its image, both domestically and abroad. Amid this backdrop, the U.S. Mint continued its timeless mission, to create currency that reflected the ideals and achievements of the nation. In 1971, the Eisenhower dollar had been introduced, and the Kennedy half-dollar had already been circulating since 1964. However, by 1979, many Americans had grown indifferent to the half-dollar. It had slipped from the average person's wallet to the drawers of coin collectors and the depths of forgotten cash registers. Still, something remarkable happened in 1979. The 1979 Kennedy half-dollar was part of an ongoing series that paid tribute to President John F. Kennedy, who was tragically assassinated in 1963. Since its first minting in 1964, the half-dollar had become both a circulating currency and a memorial artifact. Over time, its silver content decreased, and by 1971, it no longer contained any silver at all, just a copper-nickel-clad composition. Even so, it remained iconic. The 1979 issue, minted in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, held a quiet uniqueness that collectors wouldn't fully appreciate until years later. What sets this coin apart isn't just its design, which features the classic left-facing portrait of John F. Kennedy by Gilroy Roberts on the obverse, and the presidential seal on the reverse by Frank Gasparo, but the context in which it was minted and the microscopic details that would later spell rarity. During that year, millions of coins were minted, but within those mass-produced runs lay anomalies, inconsistencies, and mint marks that eventually distinguished the ordinary from the extraordinary. The 1979 half-dollar minted in San Francisco, for instance, had two distinct types, Type 1 and Type 2. The subtle difference between them lies in the appearance of the S mint mark. On Type 1, the S appears filled and blob-like, while on Type 2, the mint mark is sharp and clear. Type 2 is far rarer and was used for only a brief portion of the production run. Because of this, Type 2 coins have become the centerpiece of many high-value collections, but even among the rarities, there exist levels of prestige that defy expectations. Some 1979 half-dollars, particularly those in proof condition or coins with striking errors, double dies, off-center strikes, or planchet anomalies, have stunned collectors and auction houses alike. One such error, a 1979 half-dollar with a dramatic off-center strike combined with a mirror-like proof finish, fetched an enormous sum at a private auction, drawing attention to the coin's collectible potential like never before. The fascination deepens when you consider the coin's aesthetic appeal. The crispness of Kennedy's hair, the symmetry of the presidential seal's eagle, the balance of stars and stripes, each detail adds dimension to the coin's allure. Collectors don't just seek the coin for its material worth, they treasure it for the historical emotions it evokes. It reminds them of a different America, an era of optimism, tragedy, and resilience. It symbolizes a people's respect for a fallen leader, rendered timeless through metal and mint. What also contributes to the coin's desirability is its survival rate in top condition. While millions were minted, only a minuscule fraction exist today in pristine, uncirculated grades. Coins graded MS-67 or above are exceedingly rare. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC have reported very few submissions at such high grades, and when those few coins enter the market, they are quickly swallowed by elite collectors, often at jaw-dropping prices. The collector community began to buzz more actively around 2010 when a string of auctions highlighted just how valuable certain 1979 half-dollars had become. Bidders competed aggressively for pieces in superior condition or with rare errors. Stories circulated of estate sales revealing dusty jars of change containing unassuming coins that, upon appraisal, turned out to be $1,979 worth tens of thousands. Each story fueled the fire, each discovery sparking renewed interest. One collector from Ohio recalled finding a proof version of the 1979 S-Type II half-dollar in a roll purchased for face value at a bank. After careful cleaning and submission for grading, the coin came back with a PF70 grade. It later sold for over $68,000. Another notable case involved a man from Arizona who had kept a high-grade 1979 D half-dollar in a frame since childhood. Decades later, that very coin, untouched by time and secured from environmental damage, brought in over $100,000 due to its exceptional strike and flawless surface. Over the years, these coins have quietly ascended in both prestige and price. As more collectors chase specific years to complete their Kennedy half-dollar collections, the demand for standout examples from 1979 has only intensified. Coin shows now feature showcases highlighting this particular year, and numismatic publications have begun dedicating entire columns to the study of its varieties, die characteristics, and population rarity. It's not just an American story either. International collectors have taken interest, drawn by the coin's historical depth and tangible representation of U.S. culture during a transformative time. The portrait of Kennedy continues to resonate globally as a symbol of idealism, leadership, and youthful ambition cut short. Owning a 1979 half-dollar, especially one with notable features or rarity, is like holding a piece of preserved emotion. Beyond its history and rarity, there's something inherently charming about the idea of a simple half-dollar, perhaps tossed into a drawer decades ago, being worth more than a brand new car today. It challenges assumptions and reminds us that sometimes value hides in plain sight. The coin's rise in value is not just the result of scarcity or metal composition but the story it tells. A story that now sees examples of the 1979 Kennedy half-dollar, particularly those in pristine or error-laden condition, commanding prices that range impressively from $60,000 to as high as $135,000 depending on the grade and uniqueness. Collectors, historians, and even everyday enthusiasts continue to hunt for these coins in coin rolls, estate sales, and forgotten collections. With every rediscovered piece comes a sense of wonder, a realization that history is not confined to textbooks or museums. Sometimes, it jingles in your pocket, hides in an old coin folder, or sits quietly in a dusty corner of a jewelry box. And sometimes, it surprises you by being worth a small fortune. They carry emotion, memory, tribute, and reverence. One such piece, often overlooked in casual conversation yet deeply cherished in numismatic circles, is the 1973 Kennedy half-dollar. From the outside, this coin might seem like another ordinary piece of American change. But behind its glinting copper-nickel surface lies a story that stretches through grief, political significance, die varieties, and collector obsession. This coin represents more than currency, it represents a solemn nod to legacy, a moment in time when America etched memory into metal. The Kennedy half-dollar, first introduced in 1964, was a direct response to a national tragedy, the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in November 1963. The decision to honor him with a coin came quickly, and the half-dollar denomination was chosen both for its size and its symbolic weight. From that year onward, the Kennedy half-dollar would become a mainstay in the United States Mint's output, not just as currency but as a monument of mourning, unity, and national pride. By 1973, however, the landscape was beginning to shift. The initial emotional intensity had faded slightly with time, but the commitment to preserve Kennedy's image in circulation remained strong. The 1973 issue would go on to hold its own distinct place in coinage history, not due to silver content or commemorative releases, but because of rarity, mint handling, and collector phenomena that would only be appreciated decades later. The 1973 Kennedy half-dollar was minted at 3 different facilities: Philadelphia, No Mint Mark; Denver, D Mint Mark; and San Francisco, S Mint Mark. What makes this year especially intriguing is that the coins were not released for general circulation. Instead, they were only issued in mint sets and proof sets. That means if you didn't specifically go out of your way to buy a mint or proof set in 1973, you wouldn't have gotten your hands on one of these coins through normal commercial exchange. This single decision, limiting public access, had a powerful long-term effect on the coin's rarity in higher grades. Most people in the 1970s didn't purchase mint sets. They weren't thinking about collectible coins becoming valuable decades later. They were concerned with rising inflation, energy crises, and shifting cultural values. So, the 1973 Kennedy half-dollar quietly entered the world, placed inside small government-issued plastic holders and tucked away by a few collectors, while the rest of America moved on unaware. As years passed, many of these original mint sets were damaged, mishandled, or discarded entirely. The coins, left exposed to air or moisture, developed toning, scratches, and corrosion. The number of pristine 1973 Kennedy half-dollars began to shrink fast. The design of the coin remained largely unchanged from prior years. Gilroy Roberts' portrait of President Kennedy on the obverse still radiated dignity and purpose. His forward-facing, left-profile bust represented youth, determination, and the forward momentum of an optimistic nation. On the reverse, Frank Gasparo's interpretation of the presidential seal, with a bold heraldic eagle clutching olive branches and arrows, remained a stalwart symbol of American authority and peace. And yet, subtle differences in strike, luster, and mint quality began to set certain 1973 issues apart. Collectors began to notice peculiarities in some versions of the coin. There were sharp strike examples with deep cameo contrast in proof sets, and unexpected full bell lines and die polish marks in mint sets. Some coins displayed doubling on the obverse lettering, a faint rotation of the die, or planchet issues that added character to the piece. While error coins were not widespread, those few that existed took on immense collector appeal. By the 1990s, serious collectors had begun to take a closer look at the coins from the early 1970s. When it came time to assess the 1973 Kennedy half-dollar, it became apparent that high-grade specimens, especially those with an MS-67 or higher grade, or PF-70 in proof condition, were incredibly difficult to find. Coins graded this highly were almost always preserved in near-vacuum conditions, with no handling, and perfect minting characteristics. With so few qualifying, prices began to climb. Gradually at first, then dramatically. In the current numismatic market, demand for the 1973 Kennedy half-dollar continues to surge. As of today, certified examples in pristine, gem-uncirculated condition, especially those from original government-issued sets or submitted to grading companies like PCGS and NGC, are commanding anywhere between $65,000 to $140,000, depending on their condition, origin, and any unique minting features. For collectors, this coin is no longer just a tribute, it's a crown jewel. What fuels this valuation is not only its scarcity in high grades, but also the elusive nature of this particular year. The very fact that the 1973 Kennedy half-dollar was not released into general circulation makes it rarer than many realize. While millions were technically minted, the vast majority were locked in sets that were either mishandled or destroyed. Surviving examples in untouched condition are now essentially treasures frozen in time, with their market values reflecting both historical importance and scarcity. In addition to standard mint and proof issues, there have been astonishing auction stories surrounding these coins. One notable event occurred when a Michigan family, cleaning out their grandfather's attic, discovered an unopened 1973 mint set sealed in its original envelope. Inside, the Kennedy half-dollar displayed unusually strong luster and a nearly flawless surface. The coin was submitted for grading and came back as MS-68, the highest ever recorded for that mint year at the time. Bidding was fierce when it went to auction, ultimately closing at a staggering six-figure amount that caught the attention of even casual collectors. Another case saw a coin dealer in Nevada stumble upon a proof 1973 Kennedy half-dollar with an unusual frost contrast, so sharp it seemed artificial. After thorough analysis and grading, the coin was deemed not only authentic but one of the finest examples ever documented. It was quickly snatched up by a private collector in Texas for a reported price over $120,000, further fueling the legend of the 1973 issue. These high-profile discoveries do more than boost the coin's reputation, they inspire a new generation of collectors to look more carefully, to examine family heirlooms, to revisit neglected coin albums. The 1973 Kennedy half-dollar has become a symbol of unexpected value, of history preserved not in museums but in boxes under beds and in the silent collections passed down from parents and grandparents. Even now, after decades of coin collecting trends and countless releases from the U.S. Mint, the 1973 half-dollar holds a sacred spot. It reminds collectors of a time when coinage wasn't just about transactions, but about tribute. When currency was used to carry the memory of leadership, loss, and promise. When each piece held the weight of a nation's respect and ideals, the coin's continuing ascent in the collector world is not solely based on economic demand. There is a deep emotional current beneath the surface. Those who seek out the 1973 Kennedy half-dollar often do so with reverence, for Kennedy, for history, and for the art of American minting. It's more than a metal disc. It's a portal into a past marked by hope and heartbreak, a collectible that resonates on both aesthetic and historical frequencies. There are coins that pass through hands 1,000 times without a second glance, and then there are coins that whisper from the past, quietly waiting to be rediscovered. The 1972 Kennedy half-dollar is one of those coins. On the surface, it's familiar, bearing the enduring image of President John F. Kennedy, but beneath that polished face lies a complex story full of subtle twists, quiet rarity, and an unexpected surge in collector interest that would take decades to bloom. The tale of this coin is not one of overnight fame, but of slow-burning mystery, preserved elegance, and value hidden in plain sight. The early 1970s in America were marked by transition and turbulence. The Vietnam War was drawing to a painful close, the Watergate scandal was beginning to brew, and the nation's economy was shifting under the weight of inflation and international change. In the midst of this, the U.S. Mint carried on with its work, producing coinage that would serve a nation unknowingly standing at a cultural crossroads. The Kennedy half-dollar, first issued in 1964 as an immediate tribute to the assassinated president, had by 1972 become a fixture of U.S. currency, but not in the way one might expect. By that year, the coin was already disappearing from circulation, though hundreds of millions of Kennedy half-dollars were minted throughout the late 1960s and early 1970s, they were hoarded almost as quickly as they were produced. Some kept them as keepsakes of Kennedy's legacy, others mistakenly believed they still contained silver, even though the coin had transitioned fully to copper-nickel clad by 1971. Either way, the 50-cent piece had become more of a symbolic coin than a practical one. By 1972, it was increasingly uncommon to find a half-dollar in daily use. People saved them, stashed them, or overlooked them altogether. And that is where the true story of the 1972 Kennedy half-dollar begins. Quietly tucked away from mass circulation, that year, the U.S. Mint produced Kennedy half-dollars in 3 locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Each mint had its own characteristics, and each added its own subtle fingerprint to the year's coinage. Philadelphia coins carried no mint mark, while Denver's bore a distinctive D, and the San Francisco Mint issued coins mostly in proof sets, bearing the elegant S mint mark. What seemed at first like just another year in production would later become a fascinating chapter for collectors, especially those drawn to rare varieties and pristine condition examples. The obverse design, sculpted by Gilroy Roberts, features President Kennedy in a calm, forward gaze. His expression is one of resolve, youth, and quiet determination, a portrait of idealism preserved in metal. The reverse, by Frank Gasparo, features the presidential seal with a heraldic eagle clutching both arrows and an olive branch, symbolizing America's strength and desire for peace. The design had not changed dramatically from previous years, but the details varied with every striking, every die, and every mint. And it was in these details that rarity was born. Many of the 1972 half-dollars were struck quickly and in massive numbers, especially at the Denver Mint, leading to a higher chance of contact marks and weaker strikes. Coins from Philadelphia, while fewer, also suffered from inconsistent die quality. San Francisco, on the other hand, was focused on proof quality, and it was here that some of the finest examples originated. However, this didn't make all 1972 coins from San Francisco valuable. It was only those with exceptional features, deep cameo contrast, flawless surfaces, perfect centering, that would later rise to legendary status, and yet, not all rarity came from perfection. Some came from error. Over the years, collectors and experts uncovered 1972 Kennedy half-dollars with unique minting anomalies, double die obverse, filled mint marks, and off-center strikes. One coin from the Denver Mint was discovered with a partial collar strike, giving it a raised edge unlike any other. Another coin, believed to be from Philadelphia, exhibited striking doubling on the word liberty, creating a shadow effect that made it stand out immediately upon inspection. Each error added to the mystique of the coin, pushing its desirability, and its price, higher. Still, the true gems were those untouched by human hands, those preserved in near-perfect condition since the day they left the mint. Professional grading companies like PCGS and NGC have, over time, cataloged thousands of 1972 half-dollars. But only a very select few have ever received grades of MS67 or higher, and even fewer proof coins have earned the flawless PF70 Deep Cameo designation. These are the coins that redefine expectations. These are the coins that go from being currency to treasure. Today, collectors are scouring old collections, mint rolls, and estate sales in search of the elusive perfect 1972 Kennedy half-dollar. And they do so with good reason. Some of these coins, especially those with top grades or rare minting features, have reached astonishing values in the collector's market. In fact, depending on condition, provenance, and error features, a 1972 Kennedy half-dollar can now command anywhere from $66,000 to $140,000. These are not common prices, of course, they are reserved for coins at the absolute top of their class. But they are real, and they are growing. Stories of such finds are more common than one might expect. In Illinois, a retired veteran inherited a small box of coins from his father, a quiet man who had collected casually during the 1970s. Inside, among pennies and dimes, was a 1972 D. Kennedy half-dollar with an unusual brilliance. After submitting the coin for grading, the results were shocking: MS68. The coin, one of only a handful known at that grade, was later sold to a private collector for over $115,000. In another case, a woman in California found an original 1972 proof set sealed since its purchase. Inside, the half-dollar stood out immediately. Its fields were mirror-like, the frosting on Kennedy's portrait was deep and pristine. The coin earned a PF70 Deep Cameo, only the third known at the time. Within weeks, a bidding war erupted among collectors, ending in a final bid well above $130,000. For a coin that cost less than $5 at the time of issue, it was a staggering transformation. These events are not isolated, they represent a growing awareness of just how special this year's coin has become. And with every new discovery, the legend of the 1972 Kennedy half-dollar grows stronger. It's not just about minting numbers or errors or grading anymore, it's about legacy, surprise, and the thrill of the unexpected. The beauty of this coin lies in its deceptive normalcy. It doesn't announce its rarity with gold or silver shine. It doesn't sit in glass cases at every museum. It waits, in old albums, in forgotten drawers, in untouched mint sets, until someone with a keen eye and a little luck uncovers its value. And in that moment, the past comes roaring back to life. The history of a country, the memory of a president, and the craftsmanship of an era all converge in a single gleam of copper-nickel brilliance. Sometimes, history doesn't arrive with a trumpet blast. Sometimes, it comes quietly, wrapped in the mundane, overlooked by most, and only truly recognized when someone takes the time to stop and look closer. That's exactly the story of the 1982 Kennedy half-dollar, a coin minted in large numbers, handled by many, and yet containing a depth and hidden worth that has surprised even the most seasoned numismatists. The story of the 1982 half-dollar is one of transition, subtlety, and the beauty of accidental rarity. While millions saw the coin, only a few truly saw its potential. In the early 1980s, the United States was experiencing another round of economic uncertainty. Inflation had rattled the confidence of households across the country, interest rates were high, and unemployment figures were rising. At the same time, the U.S. Mint faced its own share of challenges: budget constraints, coin production inefficiencies, and shifting public interest in coin collecting. In this environment, the mint was not just focused on aesthetics or legacy, it was focused on survival and adaptation. The Kennedy half-dollar, introduced in 1964 to honor the slain president, had become something of a symbolic relic by 1982. It was no longer widely used in daily transactions. Most Americans rarely saw a half-dollar in circulation anymore. Despite this, the mint continued producing them, partly for tradition, partly to satisfy collectors, and partly because halting production might signal a deeper cultural shift that few wanted to confront. But 1982 was not an ordinary minting year for the Kennedy half-dollar. Something subtle yet incredibly significant occurred, a quiet change that would make the year's coinage both distinctive and, in the right conditions, exceedingly valuable. That year, the U.S. Mint made a decision that collectors would later obsess over. It ceased producing mint sets. For the first time since 1964, no official U.S. mint sets were issued for public sale. This small change would drastically affect the condition and availability of high-quality 1982 half-dollars. Typically, mint sets were where the finest examples of annual coinage could be found, carefully handled, well-struck, and preserved. With no such sets available in 1982, collectors had only one real source for acquiring Kennedy half-dollars: regular circulation strikes. This meant that nearly every 1982 half-dollar was subject to handling, circulation wear, and the damage that comes from time and touch. For a coin to survive in pristine condition from this year, it had to avoid pockets, cash registers, coin rolls, and careless storage. It had to beat the odds. The coin's design remained consistent with prior years. The obverse featured Gilroy Roberts' classic profile of John F. Kennedy, a strong, forward-facing image reflecting youthful leadership and ambition. The reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo, displayed the presidential seal with its commanding eagle, a shield on its chest, and arrows and olive branches in its talons. But even familiar designs can reveal new character depending on how a coin is struck, and 1982 was filled with striking nuances. Minted at both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities, the 1982 Kennedy half-dollar featured subtle distinctions. Coins from Denver bore a small D mint mark, while Philadelphia's lacked a mint mark altogether. What made this year fascinating was a production anomaly that showed up in a number of coins from both mints: missing mint marks. Some 1982 half-dollars were discovered with completely absent mint marks, despite being struck at Denver. This rare error would become one of the most sought-after varieties among collectors. For years, these errors went unnoticed. Then, one by one, sharp-eyed collectors began reporting them: 1982 Kennedy half-dollars that lacked their expected mint mark, yet displayed characteristics of Denver strikes. The numismatic community quickly took notice. Authentication followed. Grading companies confirmed them. And suddenly, a coin once considered dull or uninteresting had become a numismatic celebrity. But it wasn't just the error coins that captivated collectors. Because 1982 lacked mint sets, the general quality of surviving examples was quite low. Finding a 1982 half-dollar in near-perfect condition, whether from Philadelphia or Denver, was a rarity in itself. Coins with full luster, sharp details, and no contact marks were nearly impossible to find in the wild. This scarcity turned even standard 1982 Kennedy half-dollars into prizes, especially those that could reach the lofty MS-67 or MS-68 grade range. Over time, the scarcity began to translate into real-world value. Collectors who held on to clean 1982 examples saw them rise in price. The market began to reward the lucky few who either saved their coins immediately or acquired them through sheer chance. Today, the demand for top-grade 1982 Kennedy half-dollars continues to climb, with private collectors, auction houses, and museums keeping a close eye on any new discoveries. It's now no exaggeration to say that an exceptional 1982 Kennedy half-dollar, particularly those graded at the highest levels, or featuring missing mint mark varieties, can command between $55,000 and $125,000 in the current market. For many, this comes as a surprise. After all, these coins are not made of silver or gold. They were mass-produced. They look like any other Kennedy half-dollar to the untrained eye. But numismatics is not about what something appears to be, it's about what it truly is. Take, for instance, the story of a man from Minnesota who kept a handful of half-dollars from his youth in a coffee tin on his workbench. Among them, he found a single 1982 D. Kennedy half-dollar with extraordinary luster. He sent it in for grading on a whim, only to discover it had earned an MS-68 designation, one of the highest ever awarded for that year. That coin later sold at auction for over $105,000. In another case, a young collector inherited her grandfather's modest coin collection. Among the many wheat pennies and Roosevelt dimes, she noticed a half-dollar that lacked a mint mark. Intrigued, she researched it, consulted an expert, and eventually submitted it for verification. The result? A 1982 no mint mark variety, authenticated and graded by PCGS. Its final value, after private negotiation, was reportedly in the six-figure range. These stories are not fairy tales, they are the living, breathing testimony of why numismatics continues to inspire generation after generation. Coins, at their core, are markers of time. And some of them, like the 1982 Kennedy half-dollar, hold more than metal and design, they hold mystery, memory, and the enduring hope of finding something rare where no one else was looking. The year was 1976, and America was not just celebrating another Independence Day, it was marking the bicentennial, a moment unmatched in national pride. Across all 50 states, people paused to remember a revolution born 200 years earlier. But what many didn't realize at the time was that the celebration extended to something much smaller yet profoundly significant, the coins jingling in their pockets. Among them, none captured the spirit of the moment better than the 1976 Kennedy half-dollar, a coin that was meant to be commemorative, yet has become something far more than that over the years. This wasn't an ordinary half-dollar, and 1976 wasn't just another year in U.S. mint history. The entire nation was swept up in patriotic fever, and the Treasury Department made a decision that would shape the legacy of American coinage for generations. For the first time in modern minting history, circulating coins would feature special reverse designs to honor the bicentennial. The quarter, the half-dollar, and the dollar coin were all chosen for redesigns, each reflecting a piece of American heritage. The Kennedy half-dollar, long associated with the memory of a young, idealistic president, suddenly became a symbol of the country's 200-year journey. What set the 1976 Kennedy half-dollar apart wasn't just its dual date, 1776 to 1976, inscription on the obverse, or its unique reverse design. It was the way it captured the national mood, how it brought history, artistry, and patriotism into a single piece of metal. And yet, as with so many pieces of history, its true value wouldn't be fully recognized until decades later, when collectors began to uncover secrets buried in the mintage, the metals, and the mint marks. The reverse of the 1976 half-dollar was created by Seth G. Huntington and featured a majestic image of Independence Hall in Philadelphia, the very building where the Declaration of Independence was debated and signed. It was a dramatic shift from the usual presidential seal. This change transformed the coin into a miniature monument, a tangible tribute to the place where American ideals were first put to paper. It was a powerful image, and one that collectors would grow to deeply respect over the years. The 1976 Kennedy half-dollars were minted in several varieties, the standard copper-nickel-clad version struck in Philadelphia and Denver for circulation, and special 40% silver versions struck in San Francisco for collectors. But hidden within those general categories were layers of nuance, different strike qualities, subtle design variations, and error coins that would become the stuff of legend in numismatic circles. One of the most sought-after characteristics in a 1976 half-dollar is its strike quality. While millions were made for circulation, the bicentennial demand meant that some dies were overused, and some coins were struck with soft details or off-center alignments. On the other hand, a small number of coins, whether by luck, precision, or preservation, emerged nearly flawless. These are the coins that catch the light in just the right way, that show every line of Independence Hall's architecture with breathtaking clarity, and then there are the silver-clad proofs and uncirculated coins minted in San Francisco. Many people today don't realize that these 40% silver versions were never meant for general circulation, they were packaged and sold to collectors in special sets. This created a natural divide in availability. While the copper-nickel versions circulated widely and suffered the wear of time, the silver-clad versions remained mostly pristine. But even among those, only a few rose to true perfection. Some had frosted devices and mirror-like fields, proof qualities that pushed their desirability through the roof when certified by professional grading services. It's this narrow sliver of perfection and rarity that has created immense value in the collector market today. Especially rare are the coins graded MS67 or higher from circulation strikes, and PF70 deep cameo coins from proof sets. These ultra-rare specimens aren't just coinage, they are time capsules, numismatic trophies. They embody both technical excellence and historical reverence. And they're worth every bit of their growing value. That value, once modest, has skyrocketed. Some 1976 Kennedy half-dollars, especially those of immaculate quality or unique errors, have crossed into territory once thought impossible for such a modern coin. As of today, select examples have fetched prices between $58,000 and $128,000 at private auctions and collector showcases. It's a stunning revelation for a coin once minted in the millions. But that's the power of time, rarity, and context. One of the most famous cases involved a family in New York who had purchased a 1976 silver proof set as a souvenir during the bicentennial festivities. It sat untouched in a drawer for over 40 years. When finally submitted for grading, the half-dollar in the set stunned everyone. It received a perfect PF70 grade with deep cameo contrast, a designation achieved by only a minuscule number of coins from that year. That single coin was eventually sold for $110,000 to a private collector with a passion for American Revolution memorabilia. Another story surfaced from Arizona, where a retired mint employee had held onto a roll of 1976 D. Kennedy half-dollars from his final year of service. As it turned out, several of the coins in that roll were pristine, uncirculated examples with strong strikes and no contact marks. One particular piece, later graded MS68, was sold at auction for over $95,000, sparking renewed interest in high-grade circulation strike coins from that pivotal year. Of course, not every 1976 half-dollar is worth five figures. Most remain affordable, cherished more for their history than their price tag. But for those who know what to look for, those who examine the strike, the surfaces, the frosting, and the finish, there exists a world of potential beneath the ordinary. The thrill lies in the hunt, in the possibility that a bicentennial coin tucked away in a family album or inherited from a relative might be one of the elite few capable of changing hands for a life-altering sum. The story of the 1976 Kennedy half-dollar is more than a tale of design or minting. It's about a country coming together in celebration, about the emotions of a people looking back at 200 years of independence and looking forward to the promise of more. The coin isn't just a half-dollar, it's a frozen moment in time, one that continues to echo across generations, and one that, under the right conditions, has become one of the most unexpectedly valuable modern coins in American history.